The Galactic Council had sent their finest diplomats across the void to welcome Earth into the interstellar community. They expected to meet refined leaders, sophisticated ambassadors, perhaps even philosopher kings who had guided humanity through the nuclear age and into the stars. What they got instead were three humans in expensive suits who smiled too much, spoke in corporate jargon, and had eyes that held the cold calculation of apex predators. The council realized their mistake when a human called Director Martinez casually mentioned that Earth's qualification for galactic membership was their recent hostile acquisition of an entire star system. And the way he said it made it sound like a quarterly earnings report. The galaxy had expected Earth to send their best and brightest. Earth had sent middle management, and that, as the council would soon discover, was infinitely more terrifying than any warrior they could have imagined. Ambassador Zethkar of the Altarian Collective adjusted his ceremonial robe for the 15th time as he waited in the pristine white meeting chamber aboard the neutral station Harmony's Edge. The station hung in the void between systems, a gleaming testament to galactic cooperation and diplomacy. Today marked a historic occasion. First contact with the species calling themselves humans. The latest civilization to achieve faster-than-light travel and subsequently discover they weren't alone in the universe. The Galactic Council had prepared for this moment with their usual meticulous care. Psychological profiles suggested humans were a relatively young species, perhaps comparable to the Rigelian Commonwealth when they first achieved interstellar flight 3 centuries ago. The humans' rapid technological advancement indicated high intelligence, while their cultural broadcasts suggested a complex but ultimately civilized society ready for galactic integration. Zethkar's translator Implant hummed softly as he reviewed the briefing materials one final time. The humans had been observed for nearly 2 standard years since their first warp signature had been detected. Their home system, designated Sol 3 in galactic charts, showed all the hallmarks of a maturing civilization: unified planetary government, sustainable resource management, and, most importantly, the cessation of large-scale warfare. Truly remarkable. Muse Council Representative Vexani, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's soft lighting into prismatic patterns across the walls. They achieved global peace only decades after developing nuclear weapons. Most species require centuries to mature beyond such destructive capabilities. Zethkar nodded, his four-armed frame settling into what he hoped would appear as a welcoming posture. Indeed, their rapid social evolution suggests they'll adapt well to galactic citizenship. Perhaps we'll see them take seats on the Cultural Exchange Committee within a generation or two. The third member of their delegation, Defense Coordinator Grimo K of the Ursine Hegemony, growled softly in what passed for agreement among his people. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with fur the color of burnished copper, he represented the Council's military interests. Their weapons technology remains primitive by our standards. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, basic energy weapons. Nothing that would concern the fleet. A soft chime indicated the arrival of the human delegation's transport. Through the chamber's massive viewport, they could see a sleek craft approaching, angular and functional, painted in matte black with minimal markings. It docked with barely a whisper of atmosphere transfer. Remember, Zethkar said, they likely expect this to be as momentous for us as it is for them. Let's ensure their introduction to galactic civilization reflects our highest diplomatic standards. The airlock cycled, and 3 humans entered the chamber. Zethkar blinked in surprise. He had expected robes of office, ceremonial armor, perhaps even military uniforms befitting what surely must be their most distinguished representatives. Instead, the humans wore what could only be described as utilitarian business attire. Dark, well-tailored clothing that suggested function over ceremony. They moved with an unsettling economy of motion, their eyes taking in every detail of the chamber with mechanical precision. The one in the lead, a woman with dark hair, pulled back severely, stepped forward and extended what Zethkar's briefings identified as a hand, the human gesture of greeting. Her smile was perfectly practiced, revealing white teeth that seemed just a fraction too sharp. Director Sarah Martinez, Earth Corporate Diplomatic Solutions, she said, her voice carrying an odd mix of warmth and steel. I trust your journey here was without incident. Zethkar accepted the handshake, noting the surprising firmness of her grip. Indeed, Director Martinez. I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Altarian Collective, speaking for the Galactic Council. We welcome you and your people to the greater community of worlds. Excellent. This is Systems Analyst Chun Wei and Strategic Coordinator David Kowalski. She gestured to her companions, a shorter man with calculating eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a larger individual whose smile never quite reached his dead, black eyes. We're here to discuss Earth's integration into your organizational structure. Organizational structure? Vexani's harmonic tones carried a note of confusion. We prefer to think of the Council as a community of equals, working together for mutual benefit and understanding. Chunwei tilted his head slightly, stylus poised over what appeared to be a digital tablet. So, you're telling us there's no clear hierarchy? No chain of command? How do you manage resource allocation or resolve territorial disputes? Through careful deliberation and consensus building, Zethkar explained, beginning to feel somehow off-balance despite being on familiar ground. We find that patient dialogue resolves most conflicts before they can escalate. Fascinating. Martinez's smile widened fractionally. And how long does this deliberation process typically take? For complex issues? Perhaps several years. Some of our most challenging decisions have required decades. Kowalski spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that somehow managed to convey polite skepticism. That's quite an investment in process optimization. Grimok shifted uncomfortably. Something about the way these humans spoke felt wrong, though he couldn't identify exactly what. Your species seems young for such efficient decision-making preferences. Oh, we're very efficient, Martinez replied. It's actually why Earth agreed to this meeting. We've reviewed your preliminary information packages, very thorough, by the way, and we're ready to discuss terms. Terms? Zethkar's voice rose slightly. This is First Contact, Director. We had hoped to begin with cultural exchange, perhaps some scientific cooperation. Absolutely. Cultural exchange is definitely on our agenda. Chun Wei consulted his tablet. We're particularly interested in your member world's primary export industries, shipping lanes, and resource extraction operations. Very rich cultural traditions, I'm sure. An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. Vexani's crystalline form flickered through several color spectrums, a sign of deep unease among her people. Perhaps, she said carefully, there has been some miscommunication. The Galactic Council doesn't engage in resource extraction or trade monopolies. We facilitate cooperation between sovereign worlds. Sovereign worlds, Martinez repeated slowly, as if testing the phrase. So each planet maintains independent control of their assets. Of course, the Council exists to provide guidance and mediation, not governance. I see. Kowalski's smile somehow became even more unsettling. And this guidance, it's enforced how exactly? Enforced. Grimok's growl deepened. The Council doesn't enforce anything. We advise, we mediate, we facilitate understanding. No enforcement mechanisms at all? Chunwei looked up from his tablet, genuinely surprised. No sanctions, embargoes, fleet deployments to ensure compliance with Council directives? The need has never arisen, Zethkar said, though his certainty was beginning to waver. Our member civilizations understand the benefits of cooperation. Remarkable, Martinez said. You've created a power structure without any actual power. That's innovative. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. I'm not certain I appreciate your tone, Director, Vexani said, her harmonic frequencies shifting into more aggressive ranges. The Council has maintained peace for over 800 years. 800 years of peace, Kowalski mused. That's impressive. Though I have to ask, peace for whom? Before anyone could respond, Chunwei cleared his throat politely. I've been reviewing your membership criteria, and I noticed some interesting gaps. For instance, there's no minimum technological threshold, no economic standards, no defense requirements. We believe all civilizations have value to contribute, Zethkar said stiffly. Oh, absolutely. Everyone brings something to the table. Martinez's tone remained perfectly pleasant. It's just that some bring more than others. Speaking of which, I should mention that Earth recently completed what we call a market expansion into the Kepler 442 system. Market expansion? Grimokay's translator struggled with the unfamiliar term. Hostile takeover, Kowalski clarified helpfully. We acquired the entire system and its inhabiting species through a combination of economic pressure and targeted military action. Very smooth operation, completed under budget and ahead of schedule. The silence that followed was deafening. You conquered another species? Vexani's form flashed violent reds and oranges. Acquired, Chunwei corrected gently. The Keplerians are now valued employees in Earth's expanding corporate structure. We've actually improved their standard of living by over 30%. After killing how many of them? Grimokay had risen to his full height, his fur bristling with aggression. The casualty reports were well within acceptable parameters, Martinez replied, consulting a small device. Less than 12% population loss during the transition period. Most corporations would consider that an exemplary result. Zethkar felt his world tilting. You speak of genocide as if it were a business transaction. Well, technically it was a business transaction, Kowalski pointed out. A rather successful one, I might add. The Keplerian mineral resources are already showing excellent returns on our initial investment. And this, Martinez said, her smile never wavering, brings us to why Earth is interested in Council membership. We see tremendous potential for growth in this sector. Sector. Vexani's voice had risen to a near shriek. The galactic community, Chunwei explained patiently. You've got thousands of worlds, minimal oversight, no unified defense structure, and what appears to be a completely decentralized resource management system. From our perspective, it's a target-rich environment. The three council representatives stared at the humans in growing horror. Grimokay's hand moved instinctively toward where his ceremonial weapon would hang, though he carried none to this peaceful meeting. You're talking about conquering the galaxy, he said slowly. Oh, not conquering. Martinez laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. That would be terribly inefficient. We're talking about acquisition, integration, optimization. Think of it as a merger rather than a hostile takeover. Though, Kowalski added thoughtfully, the terms hostile and merger aren't mutually exclusive in our experience. The Council would never allow, Zethkar began. The Council, Chunwei interrupted gently, doesn't have an army. You don't have enforcement mechanisms. You don't even have economic sanctions. What exactly would you use to stop us? The combined fleets of our member worlds, which according to your own data, haven't seen combat in centuries and are primarily designed for exploration and scientific research, Martinez finished. We've done our homework, Ambassador. Your combined fleets would be operationally obsolete within the first quarter of any serious engagement. This is madness, Vexani whispered. You can't seriously believe you could succeed against thousands of civilizations. Thousands of civilizations that have forgotten how to fight, led by a council that's forgotten how to lead, Kowalski corrected. From a strategic perspective, it's actually quite feasible. But why? Grimokay's voice carried genuine anguish. Why would you want to destroy what we've built? Destroy? Martinez looked genuinely surprised. Coordinator Grimma, you misunderstand our intentions entirely. We don't want to destroy what you've built. We want to monetize it. Think of it this way, Chunwei added, his tone taking on the patient quality of someone explaining a simple concept to a slow child. You've created this wonderful, peaceful galaxy full of productive worlds and cooperative species. You've done all the hard work of establishing trade networks and communication systems. All we're proposing is to add a little efficiency to the operation. Efficiency in the form of human oversight, Zethkar said flatly. Exactly. We bring management expertise, strategic planning, and the kind of decisive leadership that can really maximize galactic potential. And if someone refuses to accept this management expertise, Vexani asked, though she clearly dreaded the answer. Well, Kowalski said, his smile broadening, that's where our extensive experience with hostile acquisitions becomes relevant. The meeting chamber fell into another heavy silence, broken only by the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled in their ancient dance, oblivious to the conversation that might reshape the galaxy. Martinez checked her timepiece, a simple, functional device that somehow seemed more ominous than any weapon. I think this has been a very productive initial discussion. We should probably move to the specifics. Specifics. Zethkar's voice was hollow. The transition timeline, integration protocols, management structure, all the details that make these large-scale reorganizations successful. Shinwei was already pulling up new files on his tablet. We've prepared several options depending on whether you prefer a gradual integration or a more expedited approach. We're offering to do this the easy way, Kowalski added helpfully. Council cooperation would make the whole process much smoother for everyone involved. Grimokay's massive frame trembled with suppressed rage. And if we refuse, then we do it the hard way, Martinez replied with the same pleasant tone she might use to discuss lunch plans. Either approach gets us to the same destination, but one involves significantly less paperwork. The three humans exchanged glances, a brief, silent communication that somehow conveyed volumes of shared understanding. They had clearly done this before. We understand this is a lot to process, Martinez continued. We don't expect an immediate decision. Take some time, review our proposals, run the numbers. You'll find our projections are quite conservative. What you're describing is the end of galactic civilization as we know it, Vexani said, her harmonic tones now sharp with despair. It's the beginning of galactic civilization as it should be, Chun Wei corrected. Organized, efficient, profitable. Think of the possibilities: standardized currencies, streamlined communication protocols, unified defense networks under competent leadership. Think of the prosperity, Kowalski added. Every world operating at peak efficiency, resources allocated according to optimal distribution models, conflicts resolved through proper management channels rather than centuries of committee meetings. We're not destroyers, Ambassador, Martinez said, and for the first time, her smile seemed almost genuine. We're builders. We build organizations, we build efficiency, we build success. The galaxy has been running on an amateur operation for far too long. It's time for professional management. As the words hung in the air, Zethkar realized with crystalline clarity that everything had changed. The humans weren't seeking membership in galactic civilization. They were announcing its acquisition. They had arrived not as supplicants hoping for acceptance, but as auditors preparing to restructure the entire galaxy according to their own incomprehensible but terrifyingly effective logic. And the most horrifying part was that they genuinely seemed to believe they were doing everyone a favor. The meeting continued for another hour, but Zethkar barely heard the details. Plans, timelines, organizational charts, all delivered in the same pleasant, professional tones that made galactic conquest sound like quarterly planning. By the time the humans departed with promises to follow up soon with a comprehensive proposal, the three council representatives sat in stunned silence. What? Grimokay finally rumbled. Have we just witnessed? Zethkar stared out at the stars, wondering how many of the worlds they illuminated would still be free a year from now. The end of the old galaxy, he whispered, and the beginning of something we don't have words for yet. Outside, the human ship detached from the station with mechanical precision, its navigation lights blinking in patterns that somehow seemed more sinister now. Inside that ship, three humans in business suits were undoubtedly reviewing their notes, planning their next moves, treating the conquest of galactic civilization like any other corporate project. The galaxy had expected Earth to send leaders. Earth had sent something far worse, middle management with a mandate for hostile acquisition. And as Zethkar watched their ship disappear into warp, he realized that the most terrifying thing about humans wasn't their capacity for violence or their technological prowess. It was their absolute, unshakable conviction that they were being helpful. 3 weeks after the meeting at Harmony's Edge, Ambassador Zethkar found himself in the emergency session chamber aboard the Council flagship Concordance. The massive vessel, normally used for ceremonial occasions and routine diplomatic missions, had been hastily converted into a war room, though none of them wanted to use that were allowed. The chamber buzzed with overlapping translations as representatives from 47 member civilizations tried to process what they'd heard. Holographic displays showed star charts marked with disturbing new designations, systems that had gone dark, trade routes that had ceased communication, entire sectors reporting management restructuring. The Vegan Trade Confederation hasn't responded to any communications in 4 days, reported Consul Thexera, her insectoid features twitching with agitation. Their last transmission mentioned productivity consultants arriving from Earth. Defense Coordinator Grimokay stood before the central display, his massive form somehow seeming smaller than usual. The same pattern across 17 systems. First, human advisory teams arrive, offering infrastructure improvements. Then, communication becomes sporadic. Finally, complete silence except for automated trade confirmations. Automated trade confirmations? Vexani's crystalline form had remained a dull gray since returning from the human meeting. What kind of trade confirmations? Grimokay manipulated the holographic controls, bringing up transmitted data streams. Resource extraction schedules, shipping manifests, personnel transfers, all using Earth corporate formatting and terminology. It's as if entire civilizations have been converted into subsidiaries. A chittering sound from the Arcturian delegation indicated distress. "Have we confirmed any actual violence?" asked Speaker Zixwan, her tentacles curling nervously around her translator unit. Perhaps this is simply aggressive diplomacy? The Rigelian Mining Collective tried to refuse the human consultation, Grimokay said grimly. Their home system registered multiple nuclear detonations 6 days ago. No further communications received. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support and the occasional whistle of someone's breathing apparatus. Several delegates began showing physical signs of stress, color changes, pheromone releases, involuntary vibrations. 60 billion Rigelians, whispered someone from the back of the chamber. Gone in less than a week, added another voice. Zethkar activated his speaking podium, the traditional chime drawing attention despite the circumstances. Fellow delegates, we face an unprecedented situation. The humans have not requested membership in our community. They have announced its acquisition. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, but they sounded hollow, defeated. "What exactly can we do?" asked Admiral Korthuzi of the Centauri Defense Fleet. "My vessels are research ships with light defensive armaments. We haven't engaged in actual warfare in 3 centuries. Perhaps we could reason with them," suggested Mediator Yilhan of the Diplomatic Corps. "If we could understand their motivations, find common ground." "I've reviewed the meeting transcripts," interrupted Dr. Veltar, the Council's chief xenopsychologist. "The humans aren't acting out of desperation, territorial pressure, or resource scarcity. They appear to view galactic civilization as an inefficient business model requiring optimization. Optimization through conquest. Optimization through acquisition and management. They genuinely seem to believe they're providing a service." The distinction felt academic when entire star systems were going dark. Zethkar was about to call for formal deliberation when the chamber's communication array activated. The Council's highest priority channel, reserved for genuine emergencies, crackled to life. "Galactic Council Vessel Concordance. This is Director Martinez of Earth Corporate Diplomatic Solutions. Request permission for priority diplomatic communication." The silence in the chamber was absolute. Grimokay looked to Zethkar, who found himself nodding numbly. "Open the channel." The main holographic display shimmered, and resolved into the image of Sarah Martinez, sitting in what appeared to be an ordinary office. She looked exactly as she had 3 weeks ago, perfectly groomed, professionally attired, smiling that same unsettling smile. "Good day, council members. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Director Martinez, Zethkar said, his voice carefully controlled. "We were just discussing recent developments in various council territories." Yes, the integration proceedings. I'm actually calling to provide a status update and address some concerns that may have arisen during the transition period. The casual way she said, integration proceedings sent chills through the chamber. 17 star systems have ceased all communication, Grim OK rumbled. We've detected signs of military action in several sectors. Military action? Martinez looked genuinely puzzled. "Oh, you mean the Regellian incident? That wasn't military action. That was infrastructure demolition. Sometimes older facilities need to be cleared away before proper construction can begin." "You murdered 60 billion sentients." Vexani's harmonic tones approached a shriek. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Martinez replied with the patience of someone explaining obvious concepts to difficult children. "The Regellian population wasn't eliminated. They were relocated to more suitable facilities during the modernization process. We've actually improved their per capita living space by 18%. "Relocated where?" demanded Admiral Corthius. "To our orbital housing platforms above Rigel 4. Much more efficient than planetary surface distribution, and it freed up the entire planet for optimized resource extraction." The Rigellians seemed quite satisfied with the arrangement. "Orbital platforms." Dr. Veltar's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, we found that centralized population management significantly reduces administrative overhead. Each platform houses approximately 50 million individuals in standardized accommodation units. Very cost-effective. The image of 60 billion beings crammed onto orbital platforms hung in the chamber like a toxic cloud. You've turned them into prisoners, Consul Fexera accused. "Employees," Martinez corrected firmly. "Regellian expertise in crystalline matrix construction has proven invaluable for our infrastructure projects. They're contributing members of the Earth corporate family now. And if they want to leave?" Martinez's smile never wavered. "Why would they want to leave? We provide housing, nutrition, healthcare, and meaningful work. It's much more stable than their previous arrangement." "Their previous arrangement was freedom," Zethkar said. "Their previous arrangement was chaos. Thousands of independent settlements scattered across multiple worlds. No unified leadership. Massive redundancy in resource allocation." Martinez shook her head sadly. "It was terribly wasteful." Chun Wei appeared at the edge of the transmission, consulting his ever-present tablet. "Director, we're receiving communication requests from 14 additional council territories. Should I schedule integration consultations?" "Absolutely. Mark them as priority. We want to maintain momentum during the expansion phase." 14 more systems? Grimok's voice cracked. "Oh, it's entirely voluntary," Martinez assured them. "We've simply made ourselves available to assist any civilizations interested in modernization." The response has been quite enthusiastic. "What exactly are you offering them?" Dr. Veltar asked, though his tone suggested he dreaded the answer. "Complete infrastructure optimization, streamlined governance systems, and integration into our expanding economic framework. Think of it as civilization as a service. And what happens to their existing governments, their cultures, their ways of life? Upgraded where possible, replaced where necessary. We understand change can be difficult, but the results speak for themselves. Every integrated system has shown immediate improvements in productivity and resource utilization." Admiral Corthius leaned forward. "At what cost?" "Surprisingly minimal. Actually, our cost-benefit analysis shows excellent returns on investment for all stakeholders, including the stakeholders you've relocated to orbital platforms. Especially them. The Rigellians now have guaranteed employment, standardized living conditions, and access to Earth medical technology. Their life expectancy has increased by an average of 12 years. Because you've turned them into slaves, Vexani said flatly. Because we've provided them with structure and purpose, Martinez replied without missing a beat. Before integration, the average Rigelian spent 60% of their time on basic survival activities, food acquisition, shelter maintenance, conflict resolution. Now, they can focus entirely on productive work. Productive work for Earth. Productive work for the expanding galactic economy. Everyone benefits when resources are properly allocated and managed. Kowalski appeared on the transmission, his dead eyes scanning the assembled council representatives like a predator evaluating prey. We've completed preliminary assessments for council integration as well. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Council integration? Zethkar's voice was barely audible. Well, naturally, you can't optimize a system while leaving the management structure intact, Martinez explained reasonably. The current council model has some interesting features, but it's fundamentally inefficient for large-scale operations. You're talking about dissolving the Galactic Council, restructuring it. The deliberative model works fine for small-scale decisions, but galactic civilization requires executive leadership. Too many voices create paralysis. So what would replace it? Asked mediator Yilhan. A proper corporate structure, clear hierarchy, defined responsibilities, measurable performance metrics. Shenwei consulted his tablet. We've drafted several organizational models based on the number of integrated systems. Very scalable. And who would lead this new structure? Earth would handle the executive functions, naturally. We have the most experience with large-scale organizational management. You mean you would rule the galaxy? We would manage it, Kowalski corrected. Rule is such an antiquated concept. Modern governance is about optimization, not domination. But you would have absolute authority over every world, every species, every decision affecting galactic civilization. Grimoke said. Someone has to. Authority can't be distributed across thousands of committees. Nothing would ever get accomplished. Look at your current situation. We've been expanding operations for 3 weeks, and you're still holding meetings to decide what to do about it. The brutal efficiency of the observation hit the chamber like a physical blow. The humans were conquering the galaxy, while the council debated proper procedures for responding to conquest. What if we refuse? Admiral Korthuzi asked quietly. Refuse what? Martinez seemed genuinely confused. Refuse integration. Refuse your management. Fight back. With what? You don't have a military. You don't have weapons. You don't even have a unified command structure. Martinez's tone remained pleasant, but something colder flickered behind her eyes. Admiral, you're thinking about this all wrong. We're not your enemies. We're your solution. Our solution to what? Inefficiency. Waste. Endless deliberation without action. Your civilization has been stagnating for centuries, treading water while the galaxy's potential goes unrealized. Martinez leaned forward slightly. We're offering you the chance to be part of something greater. Greater than freedom. Greater than chaos masquerading as freedom. True freedom comes from knowing your place in a well-ordered system, understanding your role in achieving common goals, contributing meaningfully to something larger than yourself. Dr. Veltar made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're describing slavery and calling it liberation. I'm describing organization and calling it by its proper name. Every successful species eventually learns that individual wants must be subordinated to collective needs. We're simply helping others reach that realization more quickly. And if they refuse to be helped, the pause was barely perceptible, but every delegate in the chamber felt it. Then they experienced the consequences of that choice, Kowalski said simply. Like the Rigelians experienced consequences, the Rigelians chose infrastructure demolition over voluntary relocation. We accommodated their preference for dramatic change rather than gradual transition. You destroyed their entire civilization. We eliminated inefficiencies and redundancies. The Rigelian people are healthier and more productive than ever. Their civilization was restructured, not destroyed. Zethkar found himself staring at the humans with a mixture of horror and fascination. They spoke of genocide and slavery with the casual confidence of middle managers discussing quarterly projections. Somewhere in the process of becoming efficient, they had apparently optimized away their capacity for recognizing moral boundaries. Director Martinez, he said carefully, what exactly do you want from the council? Cooperation during the transition process. Integration goes much more smoothly when existing leadership structures work with our optimization teams rather than against them. And if we cooperate, what happens to us? You'll be reassigned to positions where your skills can be most effectively utilized. Diplomatic experience is always valuable in managing newly integrated territories. As your subordinates, as valued team members in the expanding Earth corporate structure, think of it as a promotion. Instead of managing a few hundred worlds through committees and consensus, you'll help manage thousands through proper organizational channels. Under human authority, under competent authority, species is irrelevant. What matters is demonstrated ability to achieve results. Consulta xaras mandiblas, clica rapidly. And if our people resist this integration, then our transition specialists help them understand the benefits of cooperation. Chen Wei replied, still focused on his tablet. We've developed very effective change management protocols. Change management protocols? Methods for helping reluctant populations adapt to new organizational structures. Some cultures require more intensive guidance than others. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just conquering territory. They were systematically dismantling the very concept of independent civilization and rebuilding it according to their own alien logic of efficiency and control. How long? Grimoke asked hoarsely. How long for what? Martinez replied. How long before you've integrated the entire galaxy? Martinez and her colleagues exchanged glances, and for a moment, their practiced professionalism slipped enough to reveal something that might have been excitement. Our current projections indicate full galactic integration within 18 to 24 months, Chen Wei said, consulting his tablet. Possibly faster if we encounter fewer legacy administrative resistance incidents. Legacy administrative resistance? Existing governments that require complete replacement rather than modification. Unfortunately, some species seem psychologically incapable of adapting to efficient organizational models. What happens to them? They get archived, Kowalski said simply. Archived, preserved for cultural reference while their territories are transferred to more adaptive species. We believe in historical preservation, but we can't allow sentiment to interfere with operational efficiency. The word archived hung in the air like a death sentence. Not killed, not enslaved, but archived, reduced to museum pieces while others took their place in the humans' grotesque vision of galactic efficiency. Gentlemen delegates, Martinez said, glancing at something off-screen. I'm afraid I need to conclude this communication. We have integration consultations scheduled with the Vegan Trade Confederation in 30 minutes. Wait, Zethkar said desperately. There must be something we can offer, some arrangement we can make. Ambassador, you're still thinking about this as a negotiation. This isn't a negotiation. It's an orientation session. The decision has been made. We're simply helping you understand your options within the new organizational structure. But surely we can discuss terms, find some middle ground. The terms are very simple. Cooperate and be reassigned to suitable positions. Resist and be archived. There is no middle ground because middle ground is inefficient. The transmission began to fade, but Martinez's voice remained clear. We'll be in touch soon with specific integration schedules. I suggest you use the intervening time to prepare your people for the transition. Change is always easier when everyone understands it's inevitable. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in crushing silence. After several minutes, Admiral Korthuzi spoke in a voice like grinding metal. 18 months to archive the galaxy. Not archive. Dr. Veltar corrected hollowly. Optimize. Same thing, in the end. Zethkar looked around the chamber at representatives of dozens of civilizations, all of them grappling with the same impossible reality. They had spent centuries building a galaxy based on cooperation, diplomacy, and mutual respect. Now, they faced extinction at the hands of beings who viewed cooperation as inefficiency and respect as operational overhead. "What do we do?" whispered someone from the back of the chamber. Zethkar stared at the now-dark holographic display where Martinez's face had been and realized he had no idea how to answer that question. Outside the ship, the galaxy continued its ancient dance, star systems spinning in their courses, billions of beings living their lives in blissful ignorance of the fact that their entire civilization was being processed like a quarterly acquisition report. Somewhere in that galaxy, human ships were arriving at new systems, human administrators were setting up orbital platforms, human specialists were implementing change management protocols on populations that had never heard of Earth. And in 18 months, if the humans were correct, it would all be over. 6 months later, Ambassador Zethkar stood in what had once been the council chambers aboard the Concordance, now redesignated as Administrative Vessel CDS-1 under the new management structure. The familiar curved walls remained, but everything else had been optimized. Gone were the comfortable, species-specific seating arrangements, replaced by standardized ergonomic stations. Gone were the colorful banners representing member worlds, replaced by clean white walls displaying productivity metrics and organizational charts. He wore his new uniform, a gray suit similar to the humans, but with slightly different lapels indicating his position as Regional Administrative Coordinator for the former Altarian territories. The title sounded important, but Zethkar had quickly learned that it primarily involved rubber-stamping decisions that had already been made by the Earth Management Board. The door chimed, and Director Martinez entered, flanked by Chunwei and Kowalski. 6 months of running galactic civilization had not visibly tired them. If anything, they seemed more energetic, more focused. Martinez carried the same tablet she always had, now containing the fates of 300 billion beings. "Good morning, Coordinator Zethkar. I trust the integration of Sector 7G is proceeding smoothly." "Yes, Director. The Altarian population has been relocated to Platform Complex Delta 7 as scheduled. Planetary mining operations are at 94% of projected capacity." "Excellent. Any legacy administrative resistance issues?" Zethkar consulted his own tablet, hating himself for the practiced efficiency of the motion. Some religious groups continue to request permission for traditional ceremonies. Cultural adjustment specialists have classified it as Level 2 adaptive resistance. Level 2. Chenwei looked up from his device. That seems high for a post-relocation community. They're requesting permission to bury their dead planet side rather than in the platform recycling centers. Martinez made note. Sentimental attachment to obsolete practices. Recommend standard grief counseling protocols and gradual exposure therapy. Most populations adjust within 6 to 8 weeks. And if they don't adjust, then it becomes a Level 3 incident, and we implement more intensive change management. Zethkar didn't ask what Level 3 change management involved. He'd seen the reports from worlds that had required it. The populations always adjusted afterward, though they emerged from the process somehow diminished. Not broken, exactly, but simplified, as if complex thoughts had become too difficult to maintain. How are the other former council members adapting to their new positions? Martinez asked, settling into what had once been the speaker's chair. Grimoke has been very effective in overseeing population relocations. His military background translates well to logistics management. Vexani has been assigned to the Cultural Preservation Archive. She's documenting extinct traditions for historical reference. And the resistance movements? Zethkar's tablet felt heavy in his hands. Mostly eliminated. The Outer Rim Coalition lasted 3 weeks after you implemented the demonstration protocol on Tau Ceti. Regrettable, but necessary, Martinez said without emotion. Sometimes populations need to see the consequences of inefficient choices before they accept optimization. Tau Ceti had been home to 4 billion beings. Now it was a glass sphere, its surface fused into a perfect mirror by weapons that turned matter itself into administrative debris. The humans had broadcast the sterilization across all communication networks, along with detailed explanations of the cost-benefit analysis that had led to the decision. The mathematical precision of genocide had proved more demoralizing than any military defeat. The remaining independent worlds have all submitted integration requests, Chen-Wei reported. We should complete Phase 1 galactic optimization ahead of schedule. Excellent news. And Phase 2 preparations. Andromeda. Scouting missions begin next month. Preliminary observations suggest several promising target galaxies with minimal defensive capabilities. Zethkar felt something cold settle in his stomach. Other galaxies? Oh yes, Martinez said, noting his expression. You didn't think we'd stop with one galaxy, did you? This has been a proof-of-concept operation. Once we've finished optimizing local galactic efficiency, we'll begin expansion into adjacent markets. But surely one galaxy is enough. Enough for what? Kowalski interjected. Galactic civilization was stagnating for centuries before we arrived. Now look at the productivity metrics. Resource extraction up 400%. Population distribution optimized for maximum efficiency. Elimination of redundant governmental structures. We've barely scratched the surface of what's possible. Martinez pulled up a holographic display showing what had once been the Galactic Council's territories, now neatly organized into color-coded administrative sectors. Green zones indicated fully integrated populations working at optimal efficiency. Yellow zones showed territories undergoing active optimization. Red zones marked areas scheduled for infrastructure restructuring. There were very few red zones left. The Andromeda Galaxy contains an estimated 400 billion star systems, she continued. Even assuming only 10% habitability, that's 40 billion potential worlds. The efficiency gains from properly organized intergalactic resource allocation would be extraordinary. And the beings already living there will be offered the same opportunities for optimization we've provided here. The universe is vast, Coordinator. There's room for everyone to contribute to something greater than themselves. Zethkar stared at the display, watching data streams flow between sectors like digital blood through the veins of a machine that had once been a living galaxy. Each stream represented millions of beings whose lives had been reduced to production metrics and efficiency ratings. What about Earth? He asked quietly. What about it? What's happened to human civilization during this expansion? Have your own people been integrated into this system? The three humans exchanged glances, and for the first time since he'd known them, Martinez's smile seemed genuinely amused. Coordinator, Earth has been operating under optimized management for over a century. What do you think created us? The implication hit him like a physical blow. Your own species underwent voluntary optimization in the late 21st century, eliminated inefficient governmental structures, redundant cultural practices, wasteful emotional processes. It was quite successful. Humanity became the first species in known history to achieve perfect social and economic efficiency. Perfect social efficiency, Zethkar repeated numbly. Zero unemployment, zero crime, zero resource waste, zero internal conflict. Every human knows their role, understands their contribution to the greater whole, and performs their duties with optimal effectiveness. You turned yourselves into machines. We turned ourselves into the best possible version of humanity. Individual desires that conflicted with collective efficiency were gradually eliminated through selective breeding and behavioral modification. The humans you're speaking with now represent the culmination of a century of optimization. Chen-Wei looked up from his tablet with something that might have been pride. We are what our species chose to become when it embraced rationality over emotion, efficiency over tradition, results over sentiment. And you're doing the same thing to the rest of the galaxy. We're offering the rest of the galaxy the same gift we gave ourselves, Martinez corrected. The elimination of chaos, confusion, and conflict. Order, purpose, efficiency, freedom, Kowalski added. Freedom. Zethkar's voice cracked. Freedom from want, freedom from uncertainty, freedom from the burden of making inefficient choices. True freedom can only exist within properly organized systems. Zethkar thought about the Altarians on their orbital platforms, working their shifts in the mining operations, returning to their standardized housing units, eating their calculated nutrition portions, sleeping their regulated sleep cycles. They were healthy, fed, housed, and employed. By every human metric, they were better off than they had been on their chaotic, inefficient homeworlds. They were also, by any meaningful definition, no longer truly alive. Director, he said carefully, what happens when you've optimized the entire universe? When every galaxy operates at peak efficiency under human management? Then we will have achieved the ultimate goal of intelligent life, perfect order. No waste, no conflict, no uncertainty. Every resource properly allocated, every being contributing optimally to the greater whole, every system operating at maximum efficiency. And after that, the universe will be complete, purpose achieved. The casual finality of the statement chilled him. The humans weren't just conquering. They were working toward an end state where conquest would no longer be necessary, because nothing would remain to conquer. A universe reduced to a single, perfectly efficient machine with humanity as its operating system. Coordinator, Martinez said, consulting her timepiece. We should discuss your next assignment. We're implementing optimization protocols in the Magellanic Clouds next quarter, and we'll need experienced administrative personnel to oversee the transition. More galaxies? Smaller ones, yes. Good preparation for the eventual Andromeda operations. Think of it as a career advancement opportunity. Zethkar realized with crystalline clarity that he was being offered the chance to help destroy 2 more galaxies' worth of civilizations, to personally oversee the conversion of trillions more beings into efficient cogs in the human's universal machine. And if I decline? Decline. Martinez looked genuinely puzzled. Why would you want to decline a promotion? Perhaps I'm not ready for additional responsibilities. Coordinator, your performance metrics have been excellent. You've demonstrated clear aptitude for administrative efficiency. Declining advancement would be counterproductive. The word hung in the air with ominous weight. In the human system, being counterproductive was synonymous with being obsolete. Of course, Zethkar heard himself saying, I would be honored to accept the assignment. Excellent. Chun, make a note to include Coordinator Zethkar in the Magellanic Optimization Planning Committee. As Chunwei updated his tablet, Zethkar caught sight of the device's screen. Endless lists of names, positions, productivity ratings, assignment schedules. Billions of beings reduced to data points in a cosmic spreadsheet. And somewhere in those lists was his own name, with notations about his reliability, his efficiency ratings, his psychological adaptation scores. He was no longer a person. He was a resource being optimally allocated. Is there anything else you need to discuss today? Martinez asked, already rising to leave. Just one question, Director. When you've finished optimizing the universe, what happens to the optimization teams? What happens to the administrators, the coordinators, the specialists? The same thing that happens to all successful systems, continued optimal operation. The universe will require ongoing maintenance and efficiency monitoring. Forever. As the 3 humans filed out of the chamber, their footsteps echoing with mechanical precision on the deck plating, Zethkar remained standing before the holographic display. He watched the data streams flow between sectors, watched the productivity metrics climb steadily upward, watched the last few red zones turn yellow and then green as their populations were successfully integrated into the machine. In a year, maybe 2, the transformation would be complete. The galaxy would achieve perfect efficiency under human management. Then the Magellanic Clouds, then Andromeda, then galaxies beyond number until the entire universe hummed with the smooth precision of a perfectly tuned engine. And somewhere in that optimized universe, whatever remained of Zethkar would continue to file reports, oversee relocations, and rubber-stamp decisions made by beings who had optimized away their capacity for doubt, wonder, or mercy. He thought about the old council chambers as they had been, chaotic, inefficient, full of voices arguing in dozens of languages about problems that would take years to resolve. It had been messy, frustrating, and often ineffective. It had also been alive. Now everything was clean, organized, efficient, and dead. The data streams continued their endless flow across the display, carrying the compressed essence of a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream. Outside the viewports, stars wheeled in their courses, each one now cataloged, assessed, and assigned its proper role in the vast machine that the universe was becoming. And, in the distance, barely visible through the most powerful telescopes, the Andromeda Galaxy waited in blissful ignorance for its scheduled optimization. The galaxy had expected leaders from Earth. Earth had sent middle management. And middle management, as it turned out, was the most terrifying force in the universe, because it never questioned its goals, never doubted its methods, and never stopped until everything was properly organized according to the manual, even if it meant filing the entire universe under completed projects. Zethkar turned away from the display and walked toward his assigned quarters, his footsteps falling into the same mechanical rhythm as every other being in the ship. Somewhere in the depths of his processed mind, a tiny spark of his original self screamed silently against the efficiency of his own thoughts. But that spark was getting smaller every day, optimized away bit by bit, until soon there would be nothing left but the role he'd been assigned to play in humanity's universal corporate structure. And in the administrative logs, that progression would be marked as a successful integration, filed under mission accomplished, and forgotten in the endless pursuit of greater efficiency.